We're on page 247. Says Maran, Halacha Hey. En osin hatzitziot. We do not make tzitziot, the strings. Mehatzemer hanechaz bakotzim. From the wool which latches onto the thorns. Yeah. Kshatzon roftzim benehem. When the flock jumps in between them or goes in between the thorn bushes, we don't use that outer layer of wool. V'lo mehanimin hanitlashin min habehema. I'm going to assume we don't use also the wool that is directly on the skin of the animal, that's pulled out of the animal. Yeah, close.
They're called fibers torn from the animal.
Okay, fibers torn. Okay, yeah. The other end, the other extreme of the wool.
Well, it's going to be impossible to separate because it's kind of like pulling up a plant with its root. Like the root of the wool is in the skin.
I guess you're cutting edges or what? I'm not a farmer. I don't know how this works. I've never sheared a sheep.
Don't have that part that's attached to the skin. It's much more able to be separated and turned into string.
Interesting. Okay.
Because it's kind of hardened. It's like a nub.
So it's good to have it or not good to have it? Not good. Okay. And you don't use what the weaver leaves at the corners of the cloth. Is there a word they use for that?
They said thread remnants.
Okay.
It's almost like gleaning. It's like the corner of the field.
Vatam, the reason? Mishum bizuyer mitzvah. We don't want to degrade the mitzvah. Meaning, when you do a mitzvah, use the higher quality material you could have. Somebody bought me a Havdalah candle, and they bought the synagogue Havdalah candle. And so my wife saw me, I took them out of the boxes to look at the candle, to twist the candle, turn around the candle. So what's going on with you? Are you crazy? Like, what's happening with you? I said, I want to find which Havdalah candle is nicer. That's the one that should go to the Beit Knesset. You want to do a mitzvah? That's the one you should use. We ordered some stenders for the synagogue. One of them had a little nook inside of it. I'll use that one. The one for the bima, that's the mitzvah. That should be the nicer one. In general, when you do a mitzvah, you should do it with the nicer that you have, not from the second class quality. The halakha on the top of the next page is connected. 248. Im asa mitzemer gazul. What if you stole wool?
It says stone wool, but I don't know what this wool that's stolen. I don't know.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't know what it means. I mean,
let's say you stole it.
Stole it, yeah.
You stole it.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
You were inside David's field. He wasn't looking. You stole the whole thing of wool. You ran home with it. Or there's that one guy in the shuk. He always gets the best prices on wool because it falls off the wagon in the back.
I think you're pulling the wool over our eyes.
No, just a sheaf.
So says Maran Pesulim. They're not kosher. I mean, you don't fulfill your mitzvah of tzitzit with them. Because it says,
it's like an offering.
Vasulahem, they must make for them tzitzit. For them, meaning mishelahem. It has to be owned by them. The Torah says you must make for yourself tzitzit. Yourself has to be owned by you.
So why in this instance is that mentioned when some of the other cases could be applied to the same thing? And, I mean, was stolen wool something very common?
My thought is the following.
So when sheep are coming.
Well, if a worker, let's say there's a worker in a plant not a plant in those days, who works with the shepherds and their job is to separate and do the wool, and then at the end of the day, after they do their work processing the wool, they take some of it home. Say, well,
there could be many cases here. What I'm feeling is there's a reason why Mahan is mentioning. The reason is, in general, things that you steal you can't use for mitzvot.
Right.
But here there's an extra prohibition. The Torah goes out of its way to make sure that it must be something that you own. So aside from using something that's stolen, it also disqualifies the mitzvah at its core because the Torah adds an extra mitzvah here that you must own the wool. It's like an extra thing. It's like, are you allowed to eat bacon with cheese? Are you allowed to?
No.
Of course not. Chevra, what are you wondering? You're worried? Like, what's the question here?
Our minds are getting too complicated here.
Bacon's with cheese. Now, it's funny, when you open up the laws of meat and milk, our rabbis say, yeah, but it's not a problem of meat and milk. What do you mean it's not a problem of meat and milk? It's not kosher in the first place. Our rabbis are telling you that in order to, when you eat bacon with cheese, you're violating the prohibition of eating not kosher food.
Yeah.
But you're also not violating the additional prohibition of mixing meat and milk.
You have to have kosher meat and kosher milk.
It has to be kosher meat and kosher milk.
Right.
So sometimes you'll find Chachamim they'll tell you, for example, the Rambam says, it says you're not allowed to hate your brother in your heart. You can't hate him in your heart internally. You have to, you can't just it's not bearing a grudge, it's a separate prohibition. It says the Rambam, if you go smack him across the face, you would not violate the prohibition of do not hate your brother in your heart. But you can't smack a person in the face, so that's a different prohibition. Right now, I'm just dealing with this prohibition. So here we're adding more. We're throwing the book in. We're adding more things on. That's my assumption. Says the Rama adds in something in Rashi's script. V'davka shegazal hachutin. This is specifically in a case where he stole the strings.
The strings, not the wool.
Very good. Avalim gazal tzemer, but if he stole the wool, vasan chutim, and made strings out of the wool, ksherim, they're kosher. Mihu bat lechatchila asur la'asotan. But ideally, he shouldn't do this.
What does kosher mean in that sense?
It means, very good, you're still using something stolen. What it means is that according to Maran, you would be wearing a four-cornered garment without tzitziot. According to the Raman, no, it's a four-cornered garment with tzitziot, you're just not allowed to wear it. The difference is one uproots the mitzvah from its source.
Yeah.
Maran says this mitzvah is just disqualified, you're not getting any mitzvot for it. You're only, Ramah says, nah, it's not the way you should do it, but it's not pasul. You can't disqualify the mitzvah. You made the strings. We're going to now look inside and see maybe what their reasoning is over here. So let's go back to page 247. Under the two lines. Oh, there's so many nice little details here.
Thank you.
What happens if you make strings out of your tzitzit that were stolen? You put them on your tzitzit, and then you found the guy you stole from. You said, hey David, I'll pay you back. Did your tzitzit now go back to be kosher? Or because you tied them when they were not kosher, you have to untie them and tie them again? See that footnote on 248 on the right hand side? The big fat footnote?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's talking about.
245, you said?
248.
How can it be kosher in any sense of the form once it's stolen? It doesn't matter.
Because you paid him back.
You didn't pay him back. You said, I'm sorry. Or would you,
You actually went and said, hey, listen, how much do I owe you? Okay, I'll pay you a little bit more. Here's the
question.
You made it up with him.
If the previous status can be nullified by doing that.
Right. Maybe can you go back retroactively and nullify that you were making not kosher tzitzit? Let me tell you the truth.
It's a similar thing with an etrog.
Well, very stolen love, a stolen etrog. We have such which is why Jack was asking correctly. Why are you bringing this up here? This applies across the spectrum. Here, there's a separate prohibition. I wanted to that in yeshivot they would spend 3 months on this topic. If you stole it, how did you steal it? When did you steal it? When did you tie it? When did you pay it back? How did you pay him back? How much did you pay him back? In the world of halakha, these topics make us nervous because not only are they not practical, they're also not ideal. And we're hoping to push people to follow halakha, not like, well, if you stole it, how do you make kosher tzitzit? Like that's not that's not where we're going. But I'm doing it because Maran mentions. Let's look a little bit inside. In the bottom, under the 2 lines on page 247. Chutei tzitzit gzulim. If I stole, not me, God forbid, if somebody stole tzitziot, they're not kosher. Mishum Shneimar, because it says, V'asu lahem tzitzit, they should make for themselves tzitzit. V'darshu Chazal, the Rabbi studied, and they taught us in the tractate Sukkah. V'asu lahem, they should make for them mishelahem, from something that they own. It has to be a material that you own. Uledat Maran HaShulchan Aruch, and according to the opinion of Maran, 248, under the two lines. Afilu im gazal tzemer, even if he stole the wool, V'rak lachar miken asar chutim, and then he spun them into strings himself. V'gam nitiyashu kvar haba'alim, and the owners have already given up any hope of getting it back. Pasul tzemer zeh tzitzit. This wool is forbidden to be used for tzitziyot. Tell me what giving up hope has to do with anything.
Because now you can.
So let's say there's something that's in the lost and found. If someone doesn't claim it, someone else will take it.
For example, there's a hat here. There's been floating around the synagogue. We have no idea who this belongs to. Every lady that comes in, we don't know. Did you leave this hat here? Did you leave this hat here? At a certain point, I'm going to put out a notice to the shul saying, listen, 30 days, whoever doesn't pick up this hat, it's property of Kehillat HaShamayim, and will be donated to the Gemach, or something like that. The chances that this person even knows that their hat is missing, or they even have any, like they might not even remember they were ever here, or that their daughter wore it to shul, or who knows who brought it here. This concept of giving up hope, yeush ba'alim, it means that I no longer have ownership over it anymore. I'm almost relinquishing my rights to it. Which is why many of the tractates of the Talmud are dedicated to, if someone loses something and you find it, do you have to go look for them? Depends on what you found. If it's their wallet and they're hoping someone's going to find their phone number and call them, it's different than if they lost a dollar bill. A dollar bill, they can't even prove that it's theirs in the first place. It might have blown away in the wind, all kinds of things that they could come up with. In that situation, it could be that you could take the dollar bill, especially if it was in the middle of the street, if it wasn't, if I lose something in my backyard, it's not really lost. Like if someone comes in the back and goes, oh, Rabbi, you lost that basketball over there. I didn't lose it. I put it in my backyard. It's a different place. Where did you lose it? When you leave something in a shul, it's not the same as leaving it in the hallway over there. In the hallway, it's a public thoroughfare. Here, it's public, but it's you expect to be back on Shabbat and look for it. These halachot have different ramifications. Suffice to say, Maran says, even if the person gave up hope, the wool is still not kosher to be turned into tzitzit. 249. If you want an expert, my father's an expert on these halachot. I'm not. 249, L'dat HaRama, the opinion of the Rama is, Im gazal chutei tzitzit, if you stole the strings of the tzitziot, psulim, it's not kosher, v'afilu niteyashu ha'ba'alim mehem, and even if the owners gave up hope. V'afilu lo hayu shzurim u'shzaram la'achar miken, even if they weren't even twisted, and you twisted them. Avalim gazal tzemer v'asar chutim ksharim, but according to Rama, if you stole the wool and then turned it into strings, it's kosher. V'yesh omrim, and some say, she'afilu im lo nitiyashu ha'ba'alim, even if the owners did not give up hope, kol shegazal tzemer, anybody who stole it while they were just wool, ksharim, it's kosher. V'yesh omrim, some say, she'af ha'Rama lo yichshir el b'shnei ta'im. The Rama's situation where he says it's kosher is only in two conditions. Shegazal tzemer v'asar chutim, that you didn't steal the strings, you just stole the wool and made them into strings. V'gam nitiyashu ha'ba'alim, and also in a case where the owners gave up hope. Let me solve this question practically for you by turning to page 250. To Chafhei, Halakha Chafhei, on the right side. Af l'dat HaRama, even according to the Rama, shemachshir tzitzit gzula b'tnei mesuyamim, which allows a person to use, to make, he allows tzitzit that are stolen to be kosher under certain circumstances. Asur levarech al tzitzit zo. He would hold that you're not allowed to make a blessing on the tzitzit. V'lechatchila, and ideally, asur la'atin chutim gzulim b'tzitzit. You're not allowed to put stolen strings in your tzitzit. Mishum mitzvah haba b'avara. For two reasons. One is because it's a mitzvah that's performed at the expense of an avera. And the second, mishum she'asur levarech aleh. And the second is that it's forbidden to make a blessing on it. So what's the point of putting the tzitzit in?
So how broad a principle is this, making a mitzvah out of an avera?
Oh, so that's a good question. There's a rule that says you cannot do a mitzvah at the expense of an avera.
Right.
right? Which is, I can't steal someone's lulav and make a blessing on it just because I need to do the mitzvah of lulav. The question is, how far does this go? In my Gemara days, I would be able to tell you many more examples. But there's a famous teaching, I believe, from the Tosafot. Tosafot says, does this mean the end never justifies the means? Does this mean, what does this mean exactly? And Tosafot proves through a number of different scenarios that this prohibition only applies, that you can't get a reward for a mitzvah if you stole something, only if you are both stealing and doing a mitzvah at the same time. I'll give you an example. If you stole money to fly to Israel, to go put on tefillin at the kotel, while you're at the kotel, you're not stealing money. The stealing of the money is over. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
not
therefore,
at the
the putting on of your tefillin are kosher.
It's
but
a question of causality, it sounds like.
Yeah, but if you put on tefillin that you stole, meaning the act of putting on tefillin doubles up at the same exact time as the act of stealing, so you don't get mitzvah for wearing those
What
two.
do you mean at the same time?
They cancel each other out. If they're both happening at the same time.
I mean, you just rip someone's tali bag with their tefillin in, and then you go and put them on?
Right.
But what if you stole them in America, got in the LL plane, came to
Still, because you are still in possession of stolen tefillin.
But the money.
But if you
but
stole,
the money that you stole to fly to Israel.
it doesn't disqualify everything you do in
It
Israel.
doesn't have to do with tefillin, it has to do with the money you stole.
I mean, you could argue
Yeah, the
that
flying is not directly a mitzvah.
exactly. Meaning, let's say a person stole money to fly to visit their parents. Kibbut Avayim. I have to visit them. I don't have money, so I stole. That mitzvah of traveling to see one's parents would be cancelled out by the fact they stole in order to travel. It has to double up with each other. I mean, it has to be at the same time to be mutually exclusive. We shouldn't steal. Stealing is a big deal. I'll tell you, stealing doesn't come. Obviously,
Can't steal a car, drive for 3 months, and then drive, and then when you drive up to see your parents after
I
that.
hope
then-
that driving is a mitzvah. Because look, I even drove all the way to see my parents. This it's an important. I'll tell you why this is important. It's important because most people don't outright steal. Most people don't walk into someone and put up, they don't stick them up, take a gun and rob a cash register. People steal in instances that are more subtle. They buy clothes knowing they're going to return them. They buy electronic appliance knowing they're going to return them the next week. That's stealing. It's stealing because it's not yours.
They go to the zoo
You're not
and bring one
paying
kid
for
and then go back
Oh,
out
very
and then
good.
go back.
Very good. I've been sitting family will tell their kids. My wife says that unfortunately it happens sometimes, like in big families where you don't have to pay 20 tickets to the zoo because it's quite pricey. To tell all the kids under certain ages, tell them you're under 6. Who can tell? Maybe the kid's 7, but who can? Under 6, you don't have to pay for the kids, or whatever age it is. It's the cutoff age. But in that age, you're already teaching a child about stealing. The child is going to be numb later on in life to really stealing. But this is a real theft. This is a theft because you are not allowed to bring that child. I know now when I was flying with Al Hanan, so they made me go check in at the gate. Under 2, you can fly for free. But they said there are people saying their children are 2 and really they're 7 or they're 8 and they just, and they come to the gate. So what are you going to do? Okay, get on the
I want to
plane.
bring Dan in here. He's
He's an infant just sitting on your lap, right? But the truth is, many people steal in ways they're not really.
Yeah.
They can justify. Even in business, people say, I know this is worth only $10, but that person doesn't know that it's only worth $10. So I'll tell them it's worth $40. I'm a good businessman. If you're not a good businessman, you're a thief.
You're shyster.
Yeah. No, but this is the halakha, and the truth is that halakha, the more you deal with money or with other people's money, you can get to very dangerous places of stealing without even realizing. I mean, what everyone else is doing and they call being a good businessman is really halachically a problem.
You end up with Madoff.
So if you're in the marketplace and you're an expert in antiques, and you see somebody selling an antique innocently for much less than it's really worth, do you go up to that person and say, you should really sell this for more, or do you go buy it at the price that they're selling it and leave?
These are all good questions. And
How do you explain the shuk in Jerusalem?
I mean, it's a market.
The chessboard is $8 here, and then $6 here, and $2.
Let me give you. I just spoke
There's no
to.
standardized.
I just spoke to a bride and groom today. Thank you. When you buy something, you have to be honest about what you're buying. And there's a truth that if you buy something and it wasn't what you thought you were getting, the person who was selling it to you was intentionally misleading you, according to Jewish law, they automatically have to take it back. It's what's called a mekach ta'ut. It's a mistaken transaction. Had I known the truth, I would not have bought this from you. Makes business very tricky. Especially people who are dealing with things that other people wouldn't buy if they would know the truth about them. In marriage, this comes up, first off, in the world of shidduchim. People lie about things they discover it the next day. I don't want to go down this discussion, it makes me upset. But a ring. A person's going to get married with a ring. His wife thinks it's a white gold ring, but really it's silver. That can actually invalidate the wedding. So he has to be honest. There's some people they're macho. They want I paid $20 for it instead of $100. Tell her the truth, because if you don't tell her the truth about how much this ring is worth, that's why you very often hear the rabbi ask, "Is it worth shvei puta? Did you buy it with your own money?" He's doing it as a joke, but also to figure out if she really knows how much this is worth, because you don't want to do a transaction that's a forbidden transaction. In your situation that you know better, there should be a clear halakha. I just don't know it. I don't deal with business halakha. My father, like I told again, he loves this kind of stuff. And I was at a bookstore this summer. I think it's a good story to know. I was at a bookstore this summer. I've been looking for a certain 3-volume set of Rabbi Yosef Masas that had been out of print for years and years and years. And I had a PDF version of it, but I can't read all day on a computer. I wanted a book. The man who printed the book said it's going to be years until he reprints it. He doesn't have money, he doesn't have it. Okay. So my wife took me to this bookstore in Monsey. What can you expect from a bookstore in Monsey? It's a bookstore in Monsey, catering to Monsey people. It has everything that a Monsey Jew wants to have. Unfortunately, nothing that I care about do Monsey people care about. So, I was hanging around this book, I was looking around. I love bookstores, but everything here was as standard and classic as you could get. There was nothing there that was even slightly deviant from exactly what this bookstore owner wanted people to buy.
We had 5 towns bookstores.
So
Exactly.
I went over to the man and I said, "Sir, do you have any Sephardic books?" This poor man didn't know what I asked him. He didn't know, I said, "Oh, Sephardic. I have a Nusach Sfarad Siddur."
They have art scrolls.
I said, that's not even Sephardic.
Right, that's
I said, "Oh, I have a Ben Ish Chai for you." I said, "My friend, if I was Sephardic and I cared about Sephardic books, what kind of Sephardic person doesn't own a Ben Ish Chai already?" He says, "Okay, sir, I can't help you." Fine. So I'll figure. I'll look around. Maybe they have something Hasidic. Maybe I'll look for something. So I'm looking around, and Elchanan came to say hi to me, and he dropped his bottle on the floor. A bottle or a toy, I don't remember what he did. I bent down, this story happened to me now, this summer. I bent down to pick up his bottle, and in front of my face are 3 volumes of Rabbi Yosef Masas's letters that had been out of print since the 80s.
We're meant to have that, though. Wow. Talk about
I saw it, I went, wait a second, what is this? I take it off the shelf. Dusty, one of the spines was damaged. I don't care what, I'm taking these books. I go over to the guy at the counter. I tell him, "How much are these books?" Because it could be that he collects old manuscripts. I don't know what he's. He says, "These don't have a price." And he calls the manager. "Oh, those have been on the shelf for 20 years. Since I got the store, they've been on the shelves. Nobody even knows what they are. That's why they're on the bottom shelf." And I said, "Well, how much would he sell them to me for?" So he told me $60 for the 3 set. I said, "For each one, for the whole set. I get it off my shelves." I told him, "I just want to tell you, these books have been out of print since the 80s. They're probably worth not thousands of dollars, but somebody who needs these books would probably pay you a significant sum for them." He said, "Oh, that's nice for them. Thanks, for $60. I bought the books for $60. Now, I still debate if I had to have told him that, because if he was a good businessman, he would have charged me $200. I don't know what he would have done.
TMI.
But I would have felt much more comfortable telling him that he has something in his store. So I told him, "You see this publisher? You want to get stuff from his store next time I come." It's like, it wasn't what he's looking for, but that was a miracle. I went to the bookstore. I found something that I didn't think. I use these books on a weekly basis. I have.
You know what's happening?
So
There's
it was all because you bent down to help somebody.
Elchanan, there you go.
About the bottle.
Elchanan found
The
the
question, how you told him what they were. You say to him, hey, these are books, I just want to let you know. Versus,
My exact
hey,
words were,
this book.
I
let me
would
tell you."
pay $100,000 for these books, even though I don't have that.
Well,
That's what I told him. Those
the
are my
thing
words.
is,
Oh, so
in
you
a
tell him
business, truly though, in a business, isn't the value to him what counts?
Sure, and to him, it didn't care.
Right.
Wow.
So you don't have to volunteer that.
So
I mean, it was not
that-
required.
So I would, right, I don't, like I told you, I'm not an expert in business halakha. My background in business halakha is purely Talmudic, and in the Talmud there are 101 opinions. So I don't actually know what Maran says in the Rambam. I'm telling you now, I'm
So let
guilty
the
of
buyer
this.
beware is not the Talmudic halakha.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question, especially when you're dealing with expertise, when you're dealing with, you find this a lot in the jewelry world. People will buy pieces of jewelry from laymen knowing that they don't know how much it's worth, and they make a lot of money after.
What you're finding now in a lot of the Jewish bookstores that I've been to is it's almost like when they used to have like the family approval ratings on the movies type of things. It's like these books have been approved by this rabbinate or this organization.
It's basically they order
or
anything
this
from the Art
publisher.
Scroll or Feldheim
Right.
catalog. That's
Right.
what comes
Or
with the shop.
Chabad if you have a.
All right, and most people that's what they like. That's what they're looking for.
But there's no out of the box stuff anymore. Years ago, you used to find more
It's
interesting
online.
little books and.
So in Israel, it's
Yeah.
not like that. The truth is, in Israel, it's very different. The
I'm sure.
bookstores in Israel are still a very living, breathing kind of movement.
Like try to find Breslov in a modern Main Street
You
bookstore.
won't.
You won't. Couldn't find Likutei Maharan anywhere in the five towns. for
Right,
example.
of course. Okay, so this is all right. This is already. And the truth is, you can't blame the seller. The seller only sells what sells. Why should he carry things for the one guy who's going to walk through his door? He has a
But
certain
you're
amount of shelf
controlling
space and a
what
certain amount
people
of.
think in order to buy. If people are given more choices, they will choose it. That's the thing. It isn't like, oh, this is what, I'm not criticizing you, Governor.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, oh, this is what people want, so this is what will sell. Well, how do you determine what people want if they don't know there's another choice?
Well, you're asking businessmen to be idealists, and they're
Well,
just.
that's what Steve Jobs was. He created a market of what people didn't know they wanted yet. But because
Right.
this was better quality, make it available.
So a lot of people, in their own way, try to. I'll tell you a story in a second. But when I was living in Yerushalayim, there's a bookstore. I didn't know this for many years. There was a bookstore right next to my in-laws' house. So for all the years I was shopping for books in Israel, I was a stone's throw from my wife's window. It's called Manny's or HaShamayim, Judaica. I mean, they're like the mega bookstore in Geula. And they had a big problem. I mean, they're owned by Americans. So they're already in like a gung-ho, ultra-Orthodox neighborhood. The fact that they're American means that they sell books in English, and it means that their style is not Haredi Israeli in the first place. It means that they're selling modern Orthodox books, all kinds of religious Zionist books, and it started getting too much for the neighborhood. The neighborhood wasn't appreciating it. And they have this gang of thugs. They're known in the Haredi world as Sikrikim. They're good for nothings. Like, imagine teens at risk, but they still dress like Hasidic, and they like to break things and people and all kinds of things like that. Like the unfortunate Jewish underworld. And they have no leader. They're just anarchists, but they hide under the cloak of zealotry. Like we're zealots for the cause of Jerusalem, or whatever it is they need to be zealots for at that moment in time. They're zealots for. And I guess someone had paid them or convinced them or influenced them to start harassing the owners of this bookstore. They started doing it, and every day would come, and there'd be a new window that was shattered, or a new piece of property that was vandalized. And these people had to start investing in metal frames to cover the windows of the store. They had to invest in a security guard that would sleep there at night. Like crazy things that were going on in the neighborhood. Until finally they had a meeting with this gang of thugs, and this chevra, to the best of my knowledge, censors out their book selection now. Because to do business in the neighborhood was just getting too. And so the police come. What are the police going to do? The police they don't know the streets like these guys know the streets, and it was a very unfortunate situation. And so many books that you went there to buy were disappearing from the bookshelves. They had no choice. And these things happen. So back to our story of Tzitziot. Well, Zev said just one more thing about Steve Jobs. I had a very inspirational meeting when I was in Israel this last time for those 4 days that I was there. I met a Rabbi Meir Abitbol, not related to Abitbol that came here to sing for us. He owns this printing press called, I don't have any books from him now, but it's called B'nai Sachal, or the World Sephardic Library. And he's made it a mission of his. He said, I sat with him, and he told me stories. And he grew up in Canada, then came to Israel. And he was told his whole life that there were no Sephardic rabbis. I mean, there was the Ben Ish Chai, and then a few Chida, Rambam, but everybody else, there were no Sephardic rabbis. And he believed them. And that's how he lived his life. And his mother told, this tzaddik and that tzaddik, and he said, okay, thank you. But they must have not left behind any literature, because we don't study them in yeshiva. We don't have them in our synagogue. And even the Sephardic synagogues don't have these books. And then one day he just discovered a manuscript from Morocco. Then another one from Algeria, and from Tunisia, and from Egypt, and from Iraq, and from Lebanon, and from Syria. They started discovering there's a whole world of books that nobody has ever touched. And very often it was our fault. Children of these authors. I had a man come to me once at the Bukazet. In his tally bag is a manuscript from his grandfather. Wow. A rabbi in Morocco. He's not religious anymore, the grandson. And he's the only guy left with his manuscript. He just wanted to show me, like, I have some old papers from my grandfather. There was a book of Kabbalah on the Chumash. He doesn't even know who his grandfather is. Like he is. So I'm sure there are many such families that have manuscripts, and the children were just not literate enough or knowledgeable enough to know what to do with these things. I know that when my grandfather passed away, many of his books were just dropped off at the local synagogue because the religious family members weren't the ones living in Israel. And I can only imagine what kind of books he had in his library, what kind of things he had in his library. And when a synagogue gets a bunch of old books, the first thing they do is donate them to whatever Israeli version of Goodwill there is, or whatever happens.
They don't need them.
Right, yeah.
It's like, what are we going to do with, like,
the dusty old... Exactly. And it's a whole world of history that has just disappeared. And so he made his mission. He opened up an institute called the Bnei Yisrael. He publishes these manuscripts, and then new books, new covers, new fonts, everything. Bakol, Mikol, Kol, everything. And he just put out 10 volumes now of Rabbi Shalom Masas's books. Nice. 10 volumes for $200.
Is that what you have in your
yeah, I hunted for, since 2000 I was looking for those books.
When did you write those
2003
books
I was looking for those books. Since I went to Yeshiva I was looking for them, and every year I found a new one. He wrote these books in the 80s, 90s, from the 50s till the 90s. And so he got all of them, put them out together in a brand new set that you don't even have to think about when you want to buy it.
Wow.
And he told me that when he went into this business, he was looking for investors. And the investors told him, you're crazy. You're printing books that not only nobody wants to learn, nobody even knows that they exist. So if you want to tell me you're publishing a Chavetz Chaim on the... Everybody knows what the Chavetz Chaim is, but you want to publish a book that nobody's going to buy. And he said, watch me. I'll publish a book and someone's going to buy it. Today, he is the only person who publishes such books. He had a wall. 1,400 books. I've never seen such a... It's like $30,000 to buy the wall. Just manuscripts from Morocco. Not the ones from Algeria, not from Tunisia, not from Libya, just from Morocco. And just what he's managed to print until today. Not the manuscripts that he still has them being worked on. 1,400 books that nobody in the world knows about. And he's created a whole business. People come to buy from him and say, look, I'm a steady, loyal customer. Whenever I'm in Israel, I bring back. So there is a way to revive these things, and he's doing it, and it's a long, and the truth is that who has he found? He actually told me that many Ashkenazi authors that are finding themselves marginalized in the Haredi community are coming to him to print their books because they have nobody else who's willing to entertain their books. So he has a whole section of contemporary Jewish authors living in Israel now that are rabbis, Torah scholars, that not all are Sephardic, but they need someone who's willing to hear their own ideas, and he really is doing a lot of good work. So such a thing, there's hope for the future. Back to the stolen goods. Let's end off with this halakha. Something good maybe. 251 at the top of the page. Chutim she'ulim. If I borrow strings, halvahi, it's a loan. Delo hadri be'einayhu. How do they translate that Aramaic? 7.
It's like a loan where the object is not returned, and they are considered like your own.
Uchdidei dame.
What?
Let's say you got strings, and you need tzitzit for the next 30 days, and you want to tie those strings onto tzitzit. So long as he lets you use those strings, they're kosher for tzitziot. They're as if they're yours.
But he's loaning them to you.
Right, so in 30 days, you'll untie the tzitziot and give them back to him.
Oh, okay. I thought you just said...
No, borrowed thread.
They're borrowed threads.
Borrowed threads are not stolen threads.
Right.
Borrowed, yeah.
But if you never give them back, I thought you mentioned
No,
something about
no,
not
it
giving
says
them
where
back.
the object, it says where the, are like a loan, where the object is not returned and they are considered.
But then-
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
The commentaries here explain a little bit better than what I just told you. When you borrow strings from somebody, you're not really borrowing them. You're loaning them. The idea is, when you go to somebody and ask for, can I borrow a cup of milk or a cup of sugar?
Right.
They don't want that cup of sugar back. When you get money to buy sugar, you go to the grocery store, you'll give me back so you borrow these strings knowing the next time you go to the fabric store, you're going to give him strings back. So even though they're not yours now, he gave them to you not as a borrowing, but as a loan.
Right.
Meaning they're yours to do whatever you wish with because you plan to pay him back for them. And it's not considered stolen, and it's also not considered his. It's considered yours.
So you just have to give the value
Back.
of the thing, of the string.
Right. And the problem, I guess, that we're trying to circumvent is that you're using strings that are not yours. Says Maran, it's yours enough to be able to fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit. This next case is not so applicable in this country, but it may be in some other countries.
It's borrowed, it's not stolen item.
Yes, very good. But it's still not yours.
It is not stolen.
So we're saying it's yours enough, though, to make tzitziot out of. Hamishtachaveh lebehema, someone who bows down to an animal. Let's say you go to India.
Brown cow.
Yeah, and over there's some holy cow, holy sheep, holy, I don't know, you go to Egypt, wherever country they're worshipping sheep. And they're bowing down to it. It's their God.
Kicks you.
Betsy Baruch Hu. I don't know what it is. It's
Betsy Baruch.
Worshipping sheep, Scottish and Irish do that.
I told you about the rat temples in India, right?
right. You mentioned once in that class.
There's a rat temple.
Where they have like these images made out of concrete of rats, and then they light candles and bow down and put food there, and all the rats in the neighborhood run and eat the food. It's a rat temple.
It's like infested with rats.
Yeah.
Cuckoo.
So, Smira pasul tzitzit.
It's the pantheism, because everything is.
This wool is pasul. You're not allowed to use it for tzitziot. You understand? Because it's an idol. It's like making a bima out of a crust, wood that was used for a crust. You don't. That's not what we do. Hamishtachaveh lepishtan natua. If somebody bows down to flax that is planted in the ground,
Right.
kasher l'tzitzit, you're allowed to use it for tzitzit, shaharei nishtana, because the act of cutting it down has changed what it originally was. It's gone through a process that has changed. How do they translate it?
Or you could, that's the, well, it says it became transformed.
But it transformed from what it was into something new.
It's
Yeah.
status or it's a state of being.
Its state of being has
because it's
changed.
not connected to the ground.
Right.
It's similar.
But you had this famous situation a few years back where the ladies who covered their hairs with the wigs from India found out the hair was being used in idol worship ceremonies over there, and they went a whole scare. The shaitel's made out of idol worship hair, and today you have to buy wigs with a kashrut symbol on them and all kinds of things like that. Yeah, they have a whole new business. They created a market where there was no market, and today you buy which hechsher is your shaitel, which hechsher is my wig. Fine. Hashem, we don't deal with
They
these
check
problems
for
in my
the
family.
oil on the inside of it.
What happened?
It has to be glot.
But this is a real problem. You might not think about it, that there are things in your life that might.
But that gone?
I don't know. I don't wear a wig, and neither does my wife, Baruch Hashem. So I don't know.
That disappeared.
You know,
I remember that when that happened. It was a really big deal.
I was hoping that at that point in time
They give up the wigs.
they would give up the wigs, but nobody. The Yetzirah is stronger than that. I have so much to say on this topic. I'm holding my tongue out of respect for the rest of the world. No, you should know that I'm a believer in covering of hair. I mean, as much as Rabbi Yosef Masah said it doesn't apply today, and Rabbi Shalom said that they can wear wigs. Chacham Ovadiah's stance that wigs are not kosher for a head covering is the most logically sound stance. It's the most halachically sound as well, and that is that when they want hair to be covered, it needs to be covered, not replaced. It's a very simple thought. You don't have to break your head over it. And it's not something that requires any intense conversation. But there was one or two rabbis in our history that really pushed wigs and wearing wigs and such things. Fine. Rabbi Shalom Masas has a good point, and his point is that ladies today are struggling with covering their hair in the first place. At least let them cover their hair with something that they will feel more comfortable with. Fine, I'll give it to you. I understand that. I respect that. I respect that there are ladies that between not covering their hair or covering their hair with a wig, they'll feel most comfortable with the wig instead of a scarf or a hat or something like that.
Although it's
But-
much heavier on the head.
Sure, but it's a look thing, and I
It's
can't
very hard
understand.
on
Well,
the hair
usually when
itself.
a wig is worn, the hair is taken off.
Not all entirely, just
Shave
a
their
little bit.
heads.
Well, that's not, most people don't.
No,
do
most
that.
people don't. They're just
They just put it over there, so it
yeah.
must be
So it's
awful.
very hot and it's
Must be
very
hot,
uncomfortable, and
yeah.
it actually ruins
And
people's
there's
hair.
like a
Yeah.
net on top.
It's-
Yeah.
It
That-
grinds it out, basically.
I understand. I'm not an extremist. Chacham Ovadia outlaws this completely. I understand Rabbi Shalom's logic. But then we come to this problem where in the religious community, a lady who covers her hair but doesn't wear a wig is considered like a second-class citizen.
Exactly.
She's not religious enough because she wears a hat or she wears a scarf. Or the other way around. The Yetzer Hara that pushed the person to say, "Oh, I still want to look so pretty. I want to have." And it used to be like shtetls, which is my. You've seen like short little bob. Today they've got all kinds of wigs that.
They're bodacious.
Yeah, even in Hollywood they don't wear such wigs. Like this is it's a crazy kind of thing.
Well, even among the straight mid-nugget world, I remember 30 years ago, the women didn't wear wigs. They would have scarves, and then all of a sudden it became required to wear wigs.
Right,
In the
and
last
it's become to the
25
point
years.
where I
This is new.
had a student of mine who called me up, and she had a job teaching at a preschool in Israel. A preschool told her, "Sorry, we won't hire you if you wear that scarf. Unless you wear a wig, we won't hire you." She really wanted to know what to do. Put it aside, what I told her to do, but the fact that that's even a thing, meaning
What's happened
the
here-
wig is better than the scarf. I understand if you want to tell me it's okay. Okay, I'm willing to buy the argument that some
it
rabbis
happens in this
say it's okay.
community here.
But to say that it's a problem, Ribono Shalom, Hashem, the levels of Gehenom don't exist deep enough for such people. The fact that you turn a Yetzer Hara into an ideal is a problem. It's a problem. And it's not just with this, it's a problem with all kinds of things in our community where, a person, it's Shabbat, they don't want to wear a suit. You know why they want to wear a suit? Because it's 90 degrees outside. And because they don't like the way they look in a suit. Because they're not, so if a person is judged by the fact that they don't wear a suit on Shabbat, or they don't wear a tie, or they don't wear the hat, or they're not wearing wool tzitzit, or they're not wearing a size 300 talit, or whatever things that we've added into this Jewish world that are not Jewish at their core, it really, really, really creates problems. And if it doesn't create a problem now, it's going to be the kids or the grandkids that are going to get hurt from this. And it's very important that the things that we use, the products that we use, are all in line with halakha. If the idol worship hair wasn't enough to stop the Yetzer Hara of the wigs, so nothing will. But at least the tzitzit, you don't find anybody using idol worshipping tzitzit. But there's still a world, unfortunately, a world that hasn't been touched by the kedusha of belief in one God. You can hate on Christianity and Islam as much as you want, but according to the Kuzari, they brought a certain belief in Hashem to the world that there are countries that are still not touched by that. They're still bowing down to animals and bowing down to rocks and bowing down to plants and stars and moons and suns in the world today, in 2016, 5776.
That's
And
pantheism.
just to really understand that our tzitziyot, which are supposed to connect us to Hashem, at the very least, they can't be stolen. That goes against loving Hashem and stealing from another person, and especially they can't be made out of idols, because what kind of tzitzit would be made out of idols that would already invalidate the tzitzit at its core? But Hashem, next week we'll study
I
different
don't
halachos.
understand the logic of the last thing you talked about. The animal is used to make the thread. If the animal is worshipped, the wool is invalid. But if the flax plant is used for linen to make the thread, then it's okay to use?
I don't actually, want to tell you the truth, I don't actually have a clear understanding of how flax grows, nor how it's harvested or turned into clothes. But I'm sure that process must do something. If you want, I can look up an answer while the guys get ready for our
Well,
group.
okay.
I'm not brushing you off. I'm just trying to see inside something. But I'm making up an answer off the cuff.
Better him than us. If we're gonna make up answers.
We can tell the difference,
Well, there the rabbis also point out that the wool that was on the animal when it was worshipped is what's prohibited. But not, let's say they stop worshipping it and a new wool grows in, it's considered new wool that is transformed and is okay. But the question that you're asking is why is the cutting down of the flax any different than the cutting off of the wool? That's a very good question. I don't. It has to do here. I'm seeing with the laws of avodah zarah and what is considered a transformation. I'd have to look into it
Okay.
at a different time for you.
All right,
B'ezrat
so
Hashem.
you don't have to.